Alright, so this will be the last video in the series, and it's basically going to go through and show you how to wrap everything up, add any additional things that you need to have on here, how to coordinate all the different drawings. So the very first thing that we need to look at is setting up sheets. So right now we have a total of 5 different sheets. These were 11 by 17 sheets set up. We did this custom, very boring title block at the beginning. So this first drawing, we could technically call these all architectural drawings, but it's a very structural drawing. So we named this S100. So the designation S would be for structural. If we were working on architectural drawings only, it would be A. If we were doing HVAC drawings, it could either be an H or an M. If we're doing plumbing, it would be P. If it was E, it would be electrical. If we were doing any kind of site work, those would be C drawings for civil. So it's really a way of designating exactly who is doing what within the project, and whose responsibility it is for different things. So this is all going to be one contractor. There's more likely not going to be subcontractors, but that's just one way that we can go through and designate different parts of the process, different parts of the construction. So this sheet will be S100. Our floor plan sheet will be A100. Our elevation, our first elevation, is going to be A200. Our second elevation is also going to contain a roof plan and a building section. Now technically what we'd normally do is our elevations are going to be a 200 series, our floor plans are going to be a 100 series, our sections are going to be 300 series, and then we have the 100 designation so that we can continue. We could basically have 99 different floor plan, or 99 different elevations within this, and it makes it real easy to add additional drawings in later on, because we could just, instead of having to renumber everything, we could just add 202 to this. So even though we have a roof plan and a building section there, we're going to name this 201 because the main drawing that we're focusing on is this elevation. And then our section drawing is going to be not sheet 300, sheet A300. Alright, so after we have the sheets named, we can also go through and we can make sure that we have the correct date on all these. And if we would have did this as a XREF, instead of just inserting it, then we could have did this all in one place, but we'll save that for another project. So we're going to go through and make sure that these all have the correct date on them. It's 1/15. I don't even know if that is the correct date. It's got to be close. Okay, so title blocks are good, viewports are good. The next thing that we need to do is we need to start adding some drawing titles to these. So our drawing titles are going to go down in this area, and they're basically going to have a drawing number, a sheet number, the drawing title, and the scale. So we're going to use our design center to go find blocks that we already have established for these things. So the detail symbol block, I'm just going to drag that and drop it. And I'll put it right there. And then I'm going to move this into place. It's a pretty tight fit, but seems like it works out. And go ahead and get rid of this design center for now. That's basically just Control-2 to bring that up. And I would like to change this text, so I'm going to explode it. And this right here is going to be my drawing number. So on this sheet we only have one drawing, so it's going to be drawing number 1. It's going to be called Foundation Plan. The scale of the drawing is 1/4 inch equals 1 foot 0 inches. And that's it. So I can just copy this over to the next one. And I'll drop that right there. And while I'm copying, I might as well just copy it into all these locations as well. And I'll drop that one and rotate it. So I'll come back, I'll change this one to floor plan. And again is drawing number 1. There's only one drawing on this sheet. 1/4 inch equals a foot. Here I have front elevation. Same scale. Side elevation. Same scale again. Now here's where it's going to change. This is the second drawing on the sheet, so I'm going to change this to drawing number 2. I'm going to change this to drawing number 3. So now that I have 3 drawings on the sheet, I can name them 1, 2, 3. This is going to be my roof plan. The scale is not 1/4 inch equals a foot. We changed that to an 1/8 inch equals a foot. This is going to be building section. And again, the scale is going to be an 1/8 inch equals a foot. And then over on my typical wall section, I'm just going to rotate this in place, bring it up here, put it right there, double click on my text, and this is going to be typical wall section. And I like to have these lines come out past this a little bit. I'll just stretch those out. And my scale for this is going to be 1 inch equals a foot. And now I have all my different drawing titles on there. So the next step would be to go through and put some more symbols on here. I'm going to start out with my foundation plan. And I'm going to open up my design center again, and I'm going to go in here and I'm going to find my elevation symbol. So I have elevation view. I'm going to drag it and drop it, and I'm going to move this into place. Have plenty of room here, so I don't have to get so tight with that. I can move this out here. And again, this viewport isn't going to be plotted, so I don't care about placing this over top of that. I'm going to have another, the only place I'm going to have trouble is fitting it on these sides. Actually, I only have 2 elevations, so I don't need one up here and I don't need one over here. So this will live over here. I'm just going to mirror that, and I think I have to explode it before I mirror it. Oh no, it fixed itself whenever I exploded it. I'm going to drop that right there, and I'm going to copy this and get myself some more screen space here as well. And this time, I'm going to keep all this text oriented this direction. I'm going to rotate. I'm going to select everything and hold Shift, and I'm going to deselect those items. And I'm going to rotate this big arrow from the center of my circle, turn my ortho on, and rotate it up. and then I'm going to place this somewhere on this side. And it looks like I need to clean this up a little bit, so I have plenty of room to come in here. I would normally recommend going into model space and doing any editing to the drawing, but since we're just going to do this one little thing, I'm just going to double click inside my viewport, and I'm going to grab these and stretch them up a little bit. Double click outside of that, don't mess up my scale. Scroll over here, double click inside, move these ones into corresponding positions, and I'm going to slide this up just a little bit more. Double click out of my viewport as to not change the scale. And now I have plenty of room to move this up a little bit, and I can move my elevation symbol up a little bit. So these elevation symbols, basically we've placed these in the drawing so that I can, whenever I see this elevation symbol, it's a clear indication that says, hey, if you would like to see what the elevation of this view, the front of this building looks like, then you need to go to drawing number, whatever it is, on sheet, whatever. So what I need to do now is I'm going to come over here. This is the view that I want them to look at. It's drawing number 1 on sheet A200. So I'm going to come back to this. I'm going to double click that, change that to 1. I'm going to change the sheet number to A200. So now, whenever they see this, they say, oh, okay, so there's an elevation view of this part of the building. It's on sheet A200, and it's drawing number 1. So they can very easily turn to sheet A200 and look at drawing number 1 and see what that elevation looks like. So over here, this is going to be on sheet and again, I need to change this. I forgot my A in front of that. Sheet A201, and it's drawing number 1. So drawing number 1 on sheet number A201. Okay, so I have my elevations on there. The next thing is to add my typical wall section, or my section symbol. So I'm going to come down here and look for the section symbol that I have made. I'm going to drag and drop it in place, and I'm going to explode this. And I need to think a little bit further ahead with this one. Basically, this is showing me that I'm cutting through the wall in a certain location, and I'm looking the direction that it's pointing. So if I were to bring this over here and think about this, I'm basically starting outside of the wall, would be on the left side, and the inside would be on the right side. So whenever I'm pointing this, I need to keep that in mind. So hopefully this will make a little bit more sense whenever I place this. So again, drawing number 1 and sheet number A300. And I need to show this roof sloping. So I know for a fact that my section is going to appear on either this side or this side. So if I put it right here and I drop that, and I can just simply stretch this out like that. Right now, if I'm standing here and looking this direction that this is pointing, the inside of the building is on my left side. So whenever I look at this drawing, and we'll just see if we can rotate this real quickly. If I'm standing here looking at this, the inside of the building is on my right side. So that symbol isn't correct. So what I need to do instead is I need to rotate this whole thing this direction, and I'm just going to move it down here, move again, and right now if I were standing right here and I'm looking the direction it's pointing, the outside of the building is on my left side, the inside is on my right side. So if I'm standing here looking this direction, the inside of the building is on my right side, the outside is on my left side. So that is a correct representation of the wall section that we have. And I'm just going to stretch this in a little bit. And then I'm going to rotate. I'm just going to select the text, rotate from the center of the circle with my ortho on, and have that placed. Now whenever the contractor sees this or the building inspector sees this symbol, they say, okay, this looks a lot like the elevation symbol, but it also has this line, this cut line with the flag on the end of it. This is the symbol that represents a wall section. If I was doing a building section, which I will have to do, this cut line would go the entire way through the building. Since I'm only doing part of the wall, it only goes this far. And I can leave that like that. So we're talking about the building section. Let's find out what that is. It is drawing number 3 on A201. So I'm going to copy this. And I'm just going to move that. Let's see, looking for an open space somewhere. I'll copy it right there. I'm going to move my elevation symbol down a little bit more towards the center. Move this typical wall section symbol over closer to that 10 foot. And I could always, if I need to, I can pick this up, move it in. Right now I'm outside the viewport, and these section symbols were basically made to actual size of paper. So it needs to be noted that whenever I'm inserting these symbols, I'm basically inserting them on layout 1, and they're just kind of sitting over top of all of this drawing. So if I would have to come in here and move the location of my drawing, that's going to mess all those up. So this is usually one of the very last steps that I do. And I'm just going to undo that. Alright, so the next thing is I'm just going to move this over a little bit. It'll probably work out down here nicely and not work out up here. So I'm going to stretch this across, and I have a big problem up here where it's not going to fit. Drop it right there for now. And I'm going to see if I can move this whole thing down just a little bit. So let's see. I'm going to click inside. I'm just going to pan down just a little bit, and I'm going to stretch these down just a little bit. This is my viewport line, this is my title block line. And up here, now my flag actually fits within the drawing. So what I'm going to do is, I'm really more concerned about showing this line, this cut line, being cut through my walls, my footing, roof, everything like that. So I don't need to show over this text, and instead of trying to move this text, I'm going to use my break command. I'm just going to break this in some different locations. And they can follow this through and see how it goes the whole way through. So as to not confuse it as a control joint or cut joint, I'll break it there. And they can basically follow this through the whole way. If I really wanted to, I could add another little section in there. And they can follow that the whole way through. Alright, so I have elevation. First of all, I have my drawing title with the scale, drawing name, drawing number. I have my elevation symbols. I have my typical wall section symbol. I have my building section symbol. These are all showing up on the floor plan view. Make note of that. The last thing I need to do is add a north arrow. And since this is a fictitious made-up project, we don't have an actual north direction. So we're just going to point the north arrow upwards. So I'm going to find my north arrow, drag and drop, and just place it right there. So the other thing that I want to make note of right now is, so whenever I bring this in as a block, anytime I bring a block into the drawing, it's going to live on the layer that you bring it in on, that you import it on. And I wasn't really paying much attention to this because, like right now, it's A-building section. I don't really care about that because whenever I explode this block, since I made these with their own layers, it goes back to the layers that they were made on. So they're all on their own individual layers. Alright, so right now my floor plan has all these different things that I needed on it. I'm going to need those on those as well. And basically the thought is my typical wall section, my building section, my elevations are all showing everything from the top of the roof through to the bottom of the footing in all those different views. So I need to include those things in all these different views. All the plan views, not these views. So basically they need to be included on all the plan views. So instead of redoing all of that, I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to copy all these items, and I'm going to skip all the stuff in the middle. Copy these. I already have the drawing title worked out, and I'm going to copy them from a common point. So this would be my common point, or very close to it. Drop them there. And I can't do this one because it's at a different scale. So I'm just going to kind of put them up there for now and see if I can make this work. Then I have to go back into my floor plan and clean these up a little bit. This one looks good. These ones, basically, I'm going to have to click inside my viewport and move this up a little bit. I can stretch this with my ortho on. So this is good. These need stretched up. I can take this and bring it up here. I'm going to delete that part and take it to that. Have that cutting the whole way through. And I'm just going to nudge this over just a little bit so that it's not on top of that 10'4". This one looks good. This one looks good. So I have those all in place and I'm good to go. So then I have to come up here. Again, I'm not going to add any of those symbols at all, to elevations or sections. So I need to add them here, and the problem that I'm going to run into is, since this is at an 1/8 inch scale, I'm probably not going to have enough room to add them all. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here and try to give myself the most room that I can. And let's see, stretch this down a little bit. Move this. And I'm going to pan over a little bit because I know that my elevation symbols are going to occur here and here, as well as all those other ones. So at this point I'm going to try to add some of these in, see how it goes. Pick up my elevation symbol. Ideally it wants to be somewhere in the middle. Ideally these all want to be in the same location in each plan view. I want to at least get them close, because you want them to know that you're cutting through the building. It doesn't really matter as much for the elevation view, but for your sections, you want to show that you're cutting through the building in a common location. So I'm going to try to take a look at where that is, get that somewhat close. And I'll drop it right there. And I'm just going to erase that part, move this part down, my ortho on, drop it right there, grab this, slide it up there, and I'm just going to break it around the text. And there's no way I'm going to be able to fit my section symbol in between these two with this current layout. So first thing I can do is I can move this. Doesn't need to be there. Move that over there. Double click outside. And I think the next thing I'm going to have to do to make it work is to pick this up and move it over to this location. And now I know I can fit my typical wall section there. I'm going to pick this up, and I know that it's going to need to stretch in quite a bit, so I might as well do that now. Pick this up. And this is the nice thing about figuring out all these numbers before I start. Now I don't have to keep on doing that same work over and over again. The downside to this is if I end up changing any of my drawing numbers or adding things, renumbering them, I need to make sure that I go back through and change all those things and make them correspond. That's the nice thing about using Revit instead of AutoCAD. It automatically does all of that work for you. It looks like I never did these typical wall section. The building section and the typical wall section are the same there. I'm going to have to double check those to make sure. Looks like I made that mistake. So again, if you make the mistake the whole way through, then it's going to follow you the whole way through. So my typical wall section is 1A300, and my building section is 3A201. Alright, so I'm going to start back at the beginning. 3A201 for my building section, and I'm just going to do this. I'm going to erase my building section there, and over here I'm going to come back in here, and I'm going to copy this from that quadrant to that quadrant or that intersection, and again up here. So now it's correct. The only other thing I need here is my north arrow, which is just kind of hanging out up here. Drop that right there. And I need this elevation symbol down here. And I would do a check plot of these drawings, and I would go through and coordinate each one of these things, check them off, because it's a lot easier to find any kind of mistakes that you may have made on a piece of printed paper than looking at a screen and trying to find those things. Alright, so I added section symbols, elevations, drawing titles, north arrows. I have my sheet numbers coordinated. I have my date set up. The last thing that I really want to do before I do a check plot, a set of drawings for this, I'm going to save my drawing. I'm going to set up views for this. So I know this is 17 inches or 15.5 inches, something like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line from that corner. And basically you could do this whenever you do a plot. If I choose my printer and I make sure I'm on 11 by 17, I could come down here and I could do a window. I could do a window around these. And I could preview it. And my preview is not working. Kicking me out. But I could also, instead of doing the window option, I can't do extents because it's going to try to print everything. I can't do limits, I can't do display. So really I have one option right now, to do a window around each one of these. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to draw this line from that corner of the title block. I'm going to offset it 20. And then I'm going to move these into place. I'm going to start down here so I don't run into the other drawings. Select everything inside of there from that corner to that end point. Do that again. That corner, that end point. And I wouldn't even have to do this for what I'm going to do. It just kind of makes it easier. And then I'm going to go ahead and delete my reference line. And I'm going to type in view. And whenever I type in view, this view manager comes up. And it basically allows me to create different views. So I'm going to say new. I get another dialog box that pops up. My view name is, I'm going to start out with this foundation plan. I'm just going to call it foundation. I'm going to define a window, and I'm going to choose that as my window. I'm going to hit enter to accept that, and I'm going to say OK. I'm going to create a new one. Again, this one is going to be floor plan. I'm going to define it with a window. Choose that and that. It's my window. Hit enter to accept. I'm going to make another new one, and I'm just going to call this front. Define a window. Pick my outside edges, accept it, say OK. Make a new one. Define my window. I'm going to call this roof. So I have floor plan, foundation, front, roof. Make a new one. Select this. And I'm going to call this wall section. I'm going to say OK. And I'm going to say OK here. And now, whenever I come into my plot dialog, I now have the option to choose different views to print instead of just display, extents, layout, and window. So I can choose view, and then I can choose the floor plan, foundation, front, roof, or elevation. So if I choose floor plan, center the plot, make sure this is on 11 by 17, make sure my color plot style table is set correctly. I'm going to have a scale of 1:1, and I should be able to do a preview and have it work. And for some reason AutoCAD does not let me do a preview right now. Selected layout has an invalid media configuration, which does not make any sense. So I'm going to try changing my paper size, which for some reason that's not showing up correctly. I'll have to look into this a little bit more, but basically it should do a preview, and then whenever I print, if I center the plot, it's going to put my border in the middle of the paper. That's pretty much it for the complete project.